Hey everybody, I'm forewarned meteorologist Paul Hagan here in the Weather Center. Got a lot to talk about today. Near record high temperatures, a wind advisory in effect, and of course the approach of severe thunderstorms. Still a distinct possibility as we head into this evening and tonight. So let's give you the overview and then we'll get into some details of what we expect. Warm and windy today. Record high temperatures expected in Nashville. Wind advisory in effect through midnight tonight. Storms are going to move in as early as late afternoon, more likely moving in from the west this evening and into the first half of tonight. The individual storms are going to move quickly along the line, moving from south to north within the line. The whole line itself is going to move to the east rather slowly, so we're talking about a prolonged time frame for severe weather potential from west to east across the mid-state. The main threats are going to be from damaging straight-line winds. That means thunderstorm wind gusts over 60 miles an hour, but there's also the possibility of isolated tornadoes as well. We'll get into all those details. Let's start with how warm it's going to get. We started off in the 40s in Nashville very, very early this morning, but as I record this, just after 9 o'clock, we're already in the 60s, on our way up to around 70 by lunchtime, into the low 70s for highs this afternoon. Expecting a high of 72 degrees in Nashville, which would break the record high temperature, which is 71 degrees. Still in the upper 60s by 7 o'clock this evening as the storms are moving in from the west, and that warm, increasingly muggy storm environment is a fertile breeding ground for severe thunderstorms. It's not a guarantee, though. We'll talk more about that in a second. First, the wind advisory. These are just the regular winds, what we call the gradient winds, as that storm system approaches from the west. So these are the anticipated wind gusts just ahead of the main event of the line of thunderstorms. Talking about 35 to 45 mile an hour wind gusts, and that's strong enough to maybe topple over a few weak-rooted trees, knock down some limbs, rearrange the lawn furniture, blow the trash can down the block. It can push you around on the road quite a bit as well. All of that means there's a wind advisory in effect for the entire mid-state, and again, that does go until midnight tonight. Once we get into the evening hours, our focus shifts from the warm and breezy conditions into severe weather mode, or what looks increasingly like we're going to be in severe weather mode. Still some ways in which the severe weather potential could drop across the mid-state, but we're looking at a few different computer models first to show you whether storms are going to happen, and it's almost guaranteed that we are going to get rain. So we have the rain chances at 100%, some spotty showers off and on during the day, but out to our west, along the Mississippi River, that little broken line of thunderstorms, that's the main event that is going to be tracking closer to us as we head into the late afternoon and evening hours. This latest run of Futurecast really just approaches those storms to the Tennessee River by about 5:30, 6 o'clock. Pushes them across the Tennessee River as we head towards about 7 o'clock this evening. This has been the earliest computer model. Now it's beginning to come more in line with some of the other guidance that we have, which doesn't bring the storms into Metro Nashville and up and down I-65 until about 9 or 10 o'clock. That's much more reasonable in terms of lining up with everything else. So we'll look for consensus amongst these various computer models, and we're starting to approach that. But again, until the storms actually exist, we're going to have to take that with a grain of salt. The storms are going to move from west to east across the area. As they merge into that line of storms, the threat goes from rotating storms to a damaging straight-line wind threat that is going to persist even into eastern Middle Tennessee. A lot of times these storms weaken as they move along the Cumberland Plateau. While there's going to be some diminishing trend to the storms tonight, I think you're still going to be looking at a straight-line wind threat as we head into that time frame, late tonight into the very early morning hours of Tuesday. Switching computer models, this is something called the BAMS model. It's another one that we have access to here locally, and the timing is very, very similar. The difference is this one produces a little bit more in terms of pre-line storm activity. Any storms that develop ahead of the main line are going to have the potential to rotate and potentially produce tornadoes. So we're going to be watching out for that. This one has very similar timing, a very slow movement of that main line of thunderstorms, not really pushing it into Metro Nashville from this one until about 11 o'clock to midnight. I think that might be just a little bit too late. We'll kind of keep an eye on the latest trends with this one and see if things head in that direction. And again, moving it off the Cumberland Plateau as we head towards early on Wednesday morning. After about 3 o'clock in the morning is when the last of the storm should be moving off the plateau. One more model to check. This is a very short-run model, what we call the high-resolution rapid refresh model, and we don't call it, that's what it is called. As we head through the day, we're going to be seeing those pre-line showers, not likely to be severe until we head into the warmer part of the day. Then we could see a few severe thunderstorm warnings even in advance of that main line. Again, timing very consistent, moving into West Tennessee around 5 o'clock, across the Tennessee River by evening around 7 o'clock, and getting closer and closer to Nashville as we head towards about 9, 10 o'clock or so with that damaging straight-line wind threat, but still a tornadic potential as well. So you smooth out the differences between all these different forecast models, and there are other ones that have their own version of when things are going to be moving in. This is roughly the time frame of when the strongest thunderstorms are going to be moving into different parts of the mid-state. Earlier to the west, later to the east. Metro Nashville, kind of shoot for the middle of that time frame, around 9, 10 o'clock or so. But again, it just depends when the storms develop to our west and how fast they move once they start heading in our direction. The National Weather Service's version of this, again, you wouldn't guess as you look outside this morning that we're talking about a severe weather potential, but as I hit the right button and scoot away from the microphone for a second, there's the National Weather Service's version of when they expect the storms to be moving in. Very similar. They've kind of shaded things just a little bit later. We'll see how that shakes out as we get a little bit closer to those storms actually developing out to our west along the Mississippi River this afternoon and then making their way towards us. So the good news is that we're going to be able to see these storms coming before they get here. They're not just going to pop up directly on top of us. Now we move to the next question is, how bad are they going to be? Switching over to a different computer model, this is that short-range ensemble forecast that I reference a lot. This one points to a significant chance as we head through this evening between 9 o'clock and midnight of severe thunderstorms moving into the western half of the midstate initially and then moving west to east across the midstate. That's in the 70 to 90% chance range, which is significant. How strong are they going to be? The supercell composite measures the different severe weather ingredients and gives us a statistic that we can just compare to other environments and see how strong it's going to be. Anything over 6 is generally bad news, points to a significant threat of severe weather, and as these storms enter western Middle Tennessee, this model points to the potential of that being twice that amount, up a supercell composite parameter of 12, which is a significant severe weather threat. It does diminish just a little bit as it heads farther to the east. Specifically about the tornado potential, there's another statistic that meteorologists use to evaluate that called the significant tornado parameter. Basically, you don't want to be included in that whatsoever. Anything over 1 makes you really pay attention. Anything over 2 brings in the possibility of some stronger and longer-lived tornadoes. The main threat of this is going to be along the Tennessee River as the storms initially move in. That threat will continue across much of Middle Tennessee, including the I-65 corridor, to a slightly lesser extent as we get farther into the evening, and then that parameter does weaken quite a bit as the storms do merge into one big line of thunderstorms. Another thing we look at, and here's the big wild card, look at these, and this just looks like a big old mess, but don't worry, I'm going to guide you through it. This is a forecast sounding. So this is what the computers think the weather balloon data is going to look like if you set it up at 9 o'clock this evening. This part where I've got the cursor floating around is what we call a hodograph. That indicates how much wind shear there's going to be in the atmosphere. We can measure that as I move the cursor with something called storm relative helicity. Anything over 250 indicates the potential for tornadic thunderstorms, and the values tonight are going to be over 500. So wind shear is definitely going to be present. The thing that could really help us out is how much energy there's going to be in the atmosphere. If we get cooler temperatures near the ground or warmer temperatures farther off the ground, and that's what this red line traces, either of those factors could really help us out by reducing the amount of energy that's available. That's the CAPE thing that I'm circling here, convective available potential energy. The lower those numbers are, the better it is, because it indicates that maybe the atmosphere, as much wind energy as there will be overhead, won't be capable of producing severe thunderstorms because the storms won't be able to grow explosively enough to tap into that. Not all the computer models agree. This one here is indicating most unstable CAPE that approaches 500. The units that we use are joules per kilogram. Don't worry about that part. Now, it's not off the charts, especially by springtime standards, but it could be good enough that we're still going to have to keep an eye on that and kind of just take it hour by hour as we head through the rest of the day and see how the whole environment unfolds. Adding it up, the Storm Prediction Center has outlined the enhanced risk area for most of the mid-state, slight risk along the Cumberland Plateau. That's level 3 out of 5, indicates a significant severe weather potential, but it's not set in stone that it's going to happen. The specific threats, hail, does not look like a concern. Again, partly because of that, mostly because of that limited amount of energy for really tall thunderstorms to grow. Greatest tornado threat, including that hatched area with the vertical lines, that indicates the potential for EF2 plus tornadoes. That cuts off just west of Nashville, but it does include western portions of Middle Tennessee and the western half of southern Kentucky. We'll be keeping a very close eye on storms that enter that region. Looks like that's where the shear is going to be the greatest. Damaging wind threat, that includes almost everybody. Damaging straight line winds in excess of 60 miles an hour. If you don't like maps and you'd rather see it in chart form, here's pretty much everything you need to know. Damaging winds the main threat, but tornadoes can't be ruled out, along with localized flooding with the heavy rainfall rates. We're going to keep you posted. We'll have updates on social media. The links are below this video window on the blog post. Most important point is just be prepared, take a lesson from your Disney films, and just be ready for anything that happens and stay weather aware. And hopefully these are the only tornadoes that we will have to worry about this evening.